Hey my unique followers, it's me, Kelly, the creative mastermind behind Unique Designs by C&K. Now, today I am going to show you how to make one of my gemstone bangle bracelets with UV resin. Yes, UV resin. And UV resin is a resin that you can set with sunlight. Like you could set it outside and it will set up in like 20 minutes. Or you can use what I have here, which is, you see, a UV LED nail lamp. And you can use that to set UV resin with too. Now, this particular one is for an order. I do sell these bracelets. And I do offer a variety of gemstones. I think I have like 30 different gemstones that I do. And this particular one is for rainbow fluorite, or I should say, let me move it around so you can see because I'm recording upside down. Rainbow fluorite. And I do have others like rose quartz, tanzanite, amethyst, jade, peridot, you name it, I probably have it. And I probably make it for gemstone wise, except for diamond. I don't have diamond or sapphire because they are very expensive to get a hold of. Now, my gemstones, I get them off of Etsy, and I get a really good deal with my gemstones. So, my prices are not as expensive as others would be for a gemstone bracelet. So, I'm able to keep my price down. But this also benefits you, because then I can show you how you can do this so it's not so expensive for you. Now, as you see, I wear my gloves. And this is my UV resin I use. And it's by Lemano. I know I'm going to butcher it, but that's what my UV resin looks like. Because I use a lot of it, it's 500 grams. But how I start is I start with one little line. I directly put it in. I don't add anything to this. Just put a clear line in there because it helps with air bubbles. Now, UV resin, it could get really dicey with air bubbles, especially when you're adding gemstones to it. I just go around the outside. I'm going to put him off to the side real quick. I always put him back in the box just to maintain it. I do have two of them, but because the UV resin gets a little funky if there's too many at once, I do one at a time. This particular customer ordered 2 of my rainbow fluorites. So we're going to get right into it. All I do, and I try to make the bracelets look pretty full. And I just kind of pull it in. Now, I do need to note that when you're working with gemstones, especially if it's a paler gemstone, when you cast it in resin, whether it's UV or 2-part resin, they will come out, they'll take a wet look and it'll come out paler. So if you're dealing with a paler gemstone, like my rainbow fluorite, can be pale at certain times and have some darker colors. There will be either more dark or paler. It just depends on, for me, it just depends on my lot, what I get from when I order them and do my resupply for gemstones, how potent the color is, I should say, when it's dry, how powerful it is. This particular lot, he's a little bit on the lighter side. And when I order, I don't get a choice in how potent my color is. It's just the luck of the draw for me. So I do note in my listings, hey, my gemstones, if it's a pale gemstone, it's going to come out paler. It takes on a wet look. So there's no surprise. And I just go around, as you see, and fill it in. Oops. Now, it gets a little tedious, but this is one of my favorite bracelets to make. And no gemstone gets left behind, so I make sure I find all of them and just kind of push them in there. There's a reason why I put clear resin in the bottom first. It's easier when you're putting the gemstones in. You can get bubbles trapped underneath, and by having that initial resin in there already, helps eliminate the air bubbles, you could say, or gives it a vehicle to where it's easier for the air bubbles to get pushed back to the top, because the air bubbles will rise in this. And I will show you when you have air bubbles. I know you guys have seen me before. When I'm dealing with my two-part, I don't use rubbing alcohol to get rid of my air bubbles. UV resin is a little bit more difficult to use rubbing alcohol. So I do use fire. I do use a little lighter to pop some air bubbles. I try to pack the bracelets as much as I can, because I want to have that gorgeous look. So I kind of just push them down. This also helps spread them around the edge of the bracelet. I just take a little toothpick to do it. It also helps push air bubbles to the top, because you can get air bubbles caught under the gemstones and they can't rise to the top, so you can't get rid of them. So it kind of helps push them all together. Now, when I set this, I run it twice through the UV light just to be sure that I'm set. Because depending on the gemstone, the darker the gemstone, the harder it is for the UV light to penetrate and set the resin. So that's why I normally run it a couple times through the UV light. Or if you don't have a UV light, set it out in the sun for about 20 minutes. The heat of the sun doesn't really affect the bracelet. It won't affect this resin as much as it would be if you're doing it with two-part. That's the benefit of UV resin, is it doesn't affect it as much. And I just go in with clear resin and just refill my bracelet in. Just take it around the edge. And if you're still watching me, why don't you subscribe so you don't miss any opportunity to learn how to do something cool and different, give you an idea so you can express yourself, because art is a form of expression. You can use it to either relax with, and everybody sees art differently. So make sure you like the video, and if you have a question, or if you want to see me do something that you haven't seen anybody else do, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see. So as you see, I already got some air bubbles starting. I just take my little toothpick here and just kind of bring them to the edge to where the heat can hit them. I just kind of rotate around. You can't see it on camera, but I can see it. So I'm able to see the air bubbles and bring them up to the surface. And occasionally, because the air bubbles will get in your way, so you can't really see if you filled the mold entirely. So once you've removed most of your air bubbles, it's a lot easier to see if you need to add more resin or not. I just quickly run the heat along it. Then that lets me know, yep, I do need some more resin. I was a little light on him. Now, if you're curious, my UV resin does self-level to a point. Sometimes I have to help it along. Now, with my bracelets, 90% of the time I do have to go over it with a little hand file, because I do have a habit with this of getting burrs. So I run over it, and then I can come back in with a little bit more UV resin after I've filed it and wiped off all the dust, and I can smooth it over with clear resin. That's what I normally do to finish off most of my bracelets, especially if I've gone back in and hit it with a file to get rid of edges, just so I can maintain the brightness. I go back over it with clear resin. Now, in the description, I'll let you know where I got most of my supplies from. So just be aware, I will put it in the listing. Or not the listing, I'm sorry. Description, I don't know what I'm thinking here. So you'll be able to make your own. It just comes down to price point. Some materials can get very expensive, but if you're just starting with getting into UV resin, you can actually, Michaels does sell a small bottle of UV resin, and it's actually pretty decent to work with. I just have my favorite. My favorite is this brand. I just like how it sets for me. And then I hit the 90 seconds, and then it'll set it for 90. Now please note, once you come out of the UV light, they will be a little bit on the hot side. So give it a few seconds before you pull it out and try to unmold it to cool down. So let's see if I can get this to set fast enough so I can unmold it so you guys can see it. Now, I do have a couple gemstones I can show you that I have, that I carry in my shop as a choice. I do chips. I prefer to do chips. Sometimes I get nice deals, so I'll get a nice bulk. Like tanzanite is hard for me to get a hold of and can be on the expensive side. But I don't go for high grade, because high grade gets extremely expensive. Just so you can see some of the things that I offer. And here's an example of a pale gemstone. You can see how pale he is. You can only imagine him when I set him in resin. He's going to be paler. He'll have this soft pink glow. And sometimes for rose quartz for me, oh, he set nicely. I'm going to be able to unmold him for you guys right now. With rose quartz, for me, it just depends on my order. Sometimes I get paler, or sometimes I get a brighter batch where it's more vibrant and pink, that soft pink, or it's very, very soft. And here's rainbow fluorite. You see, like I said, it does take on a paler tone for this, but once you get him out into the light, he'll look differently. Now, I do have an edge on him, so I will have to go back in and file him. But this is what my gemstone bracelets look like with UV. So, and until next time, be you, be unique. And I'll see you in the next video.